We are live. So hopefully you guys are having a great week. I'm going to give some time for you guys to start jumping on. We're right at the top of the hour. And today I've got a super duper extra special call or meeting with you guys. And I mean, this one's going to be really, really good. Today we're going to be talking about putting together your seller guide. Okay. Now you may have already put your seller guide together. I can see you guys jumping on right now. Ooh, I see y'all jumping on. You might have already put your seller guide together, or maybe you haven't put your seller guide together yet. I'm going to talk to you about putting it together. This time together that we have is really going to be all about this. This has been one of the most phenomenal pieces that I've ever had. It's been an absolute game changer. It's a tool that you should be using if you're not already. Now, I'm going to talk to you about how to unlock it. And obviously you change the cover, make it your own, but I'm going to talk to you about how to unlock it as a mentorship master. If you haven't unlocked it already, okay? But again, like what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about this book right here, why you should be using this book in your practice, how to use it in your practice, how to customize it, how to make it your own, and all that stuff, okay? Hopefully you guys are having a great week. Let me hear, it's rainy where I am. Hopefully everything's going good where you guys are. It's kind of rainy and warm today, so we can't complain. We've been needing the rain, and the weather is in the 70s. So, it's raining in New Braunfels, Christy says. Okay, so hopefully we'll have a good, clear feed for the rest of this, because this is a really, really important call for you guys. Now, we're still in the book Triple My Listings, and we're talking lead generation strategies. You guys have been asking me, how in the world do you get all these leads? And so that's what we've been spending. This is our 10th call where we're just going over this topic on how to generate a nonstop supply of listing leads, okay? Not buyer leads, but listing leads, so that you can have all the listing business that your heart desires. And today we're specifically on page 81. We're going to be talking about writing your seller book, okay? Writing your seller book. This has been a game changer. Once I implemented this in my business, has absolutely been a game changer. And it's going to be a game changer for you too. So I do have a big announcement that I'm going to make for you guys. It's coming soon. I can't talk about it on today, but hopefully by next week, we'll be able to talk about this huge announcement, something new and exciting that we're launching, a brand new company, and it's huge. It's huge. I wish I could talk about it, but I can't. So, but it's coming. You'll hear more about it. Hopefully next week, if not the week after. Okay. So what I will say though, and what I do want to touch on is our book of the month. Hopefully you guys have been reading. Feel Free to Prosper. Feel Free to Prosper. That's our book of the month. Log into the portal if you don't have, if you haven't already gotten it in terms of knowing exactly which book it is. Log into the portal. There'll be a link to where you can go get it on Amazon, or you can get it through Audible. Okay, but that is our book of the month. What I'm trying to do is give you guys material that will help you get into the quantum field, into the quantum level. This is the level that Jesus played at. This is the same level that I play at. It's the level where miracles happen. It's the level where your whole life becomes a miracle. Every second and every minute becomes a divine appointment. So that's really where I'm wanting to take you guys. I've been enjoying seeing the journey, and it's good. It's good stuff. So let's kick this thing off with our training, because we could spend a lot of time on mindset, which is what I typically like to do, but I think you guys are starting to develop the mindset. when you're reading books like Feel Free to Prosper, you can't help but to have the kind of mindset that you need. So again, today we're on page 81, and we're going to talk about your seller guide. Okay, this puppy right here that has been the reason for so many of the listings that I've gotten. And I'm going to talk to you guys around the psychology around this book. Obviously, you want to customize it, make it your own, and how I came up with it and why you should be using it, how you can tweak it, how you can customize it, etc. First, I want to tell you how to unlock it. So if those of you, you're in Mentorship Masters, you can go to the Mentorship Masters portal, and there's 2 ways to unlock it. Number one, well, there's actually 3 ways. The first way is you pay $1,000. Okay, you get the license, it's yours. It's $1,000. Okay, that's the first way to unlock it. If you're in Mentorship Masters, sometimes we share these recordings with folks that are outside of Mentorship Masters. But if you're in Mentorship Masters, you're going to avoid paying that $1,000 because you're part of the family. You get this whole system for free. But it takes a while to unlock. I believe that first you learn and then you earn. Okay, first you learn and then you earn. So this book is going to unlock in your Mentorship Masters portal after you've been in the Mentorship Masters program for 90 days. The other way to unlock it is after you complete your first closing here at EXP, and so through Mentorship Masters. So either way, if you complete your first closing, it'll unlock, or if you've been in Mentorship Masters for 90 days, it'll automatically unlock for you that way as well. So the psychology behind why I wrote this, okay, there's a couple of moving pieces to it, and I'm going to kind of get into that. So as I realized over time, it occurred to me because of, when you sit down with so many sellers and you're belly to belly, toe to toe, cheek to cheek, face to face, and you're in their space and you're sitting down with them, you start to understand what their biggest concerns are, what their biggest fears are, some of their biggest worries, some of their biggest misunderstandings, okay? And the kind of things that you really need to educate them on and make sure that they understand so that they can move forward, they can make the right decision to move forward with listing with you, okay? You start to understand those things. And what you want to do is you want to educate the client in a soft way so that when you start to work with them, number one, they have the education, they understand what we're doing, what we're up to, where we're going, why we're doing what we're doing. So they understand the reason behind what you're doing and the psychology behind what you're doing. Plus they understand some of the terminology. That's a big one. And the second big reason is that people, and this is basic, okay? People they just don't want to sit down with you or me, okay? People are busy. People don't want to be sold. They want to be sure that they really want to sell their house before they ever sit down with you. And so it's just the same thing that we do if we're going to go to a restaurant, we've never been to it before, or we're going to meet a person that we've never met before. We want to get some background on that person. We want to Google them. We want to know more information about them. And so what your book does is it gives people a comfort level about you. They can sit down and get to know you without actually sitting down with you, okay? This is the way people prefer to do business nowadays. And it actually has always been that way, but we haven't had mechanisms in the past to where we could overcome that. So to give an example, which I've used before, is back in the old days, if someone was coming up to your property, okay, and you had, your 10 acres or 20 acres, and you saw somebody coming up to the property that you didn't recognize, the question is this a friend or is this a foe? Okay, friend or foe. Now that's the same way that we're still wired even today, that when we see a new person that we don't know, we're trying to stack that person up and we're trying to understand, can we trust this person? That's the bottom line. People are trying to figure out, can they trust you? So what your book does is it allows them to get to know you and to get to trust you, to get to like you, to get to trust you. Because here's the thing, guys. People do business with people that they know, like, and trust. People do business with people that they know, like, and trust. One of the big misunderstandings that a lot of my students have is that they believe that they can sit down with a person and convert that person in one conversation. And maybe you can. I mean, I'm not saying it can't be done. It's quite possible that you can do it in one conversation. But more than likely, a person is going to have to warm up to you. And even before they sit down with you, they're going to want to get to know you. Okay. That's the reason why I tell you over and over that, you have to win the listing before you ever sit down to meet with the seller. Let me say it again. You have to win the listing before you ever sit down to meet with the seller. So when I sit down with a seller, they've already got a copy of my book. They've already read the book, or at least they've skimmed through it. And they've already, kind of keyed in on a few things in here. And they're already at a level where they feel comfortable hiring me. Okay. So this allows you to toot your horn. Remember last week we talked about, on the last training, we talked about your pre-listing package. I've got mine right here. So we talked about your pre-listing package, them getting to know you before they sit down with you. And the second piece of that, well, another piece of that we talked about is your pre-listing video. You definitely want to have that. And then you've got your book. Okay. So that is a trio that is unstoppable and absolutely unbeatable. So how do you use this piece? Now, before I get into that, I'm going to talk to you about how to edit it. The book is in Microsoft Word. Okay. So if you don't have Microsoft Word, and I get a lot of people, well, I'm on a Mac. Well, I'm on a Mac too. And guess what? They make Microsoft Word for Mac. That's how I actually created the book, on Mac. So it doesn't matter if you're on a Mac or a PC, you can edit the book in Microsoft Word. Now, you can't edit it in anything else but Microsoft Word. You can't edit it in Google Doc or anything like that. You have to use Microsoft Word. Now, if you don't have Microsoft Word, guess what? You can go and you can get a 30-day trial. Actually, you have a couple options. Number one, you can get a 30-day trial, and then after that, it's $10 a month, like $9.97 a month. Okay, so it's a monthly subscription. So I recommend, if you never use Word and have no intention of using Word, download the free trial, edit your book, okay, make whatever changes you want to make to it, and edit your pre-listing package, which is also in Word, and then cancel your subscription. If you want to keep it, then you just go pay month to month until you feel like you don't need it anymore. Now, the other option that you could do is you could, again, have somebody that you trust, maybe a high school student or a college student, okay, or even a Fiverr, Fiverr, and you take your book, okay, what you do is you print out the PDF of it, or you just print it out on paper, okay, and then you just physically go through it and you make changes. You mark up what changes you want made. Then you take that and you hand it to your VA or to your admin or to your college student or your high school student or whoever that you want to use to be able to edit that. Okay. Super duper simple, guys. I mean, it's a simple process. Okay. Or you can edit it yourself. It's up to you. So that's basically how you get it, how you edit it. Now, let's go through, and I want to talk to you a little bit about what each chapter is about and the psychology around each chapter and why I wrote each chapter the way I did. Some of you are at a disadvantage because you don't already have this, but don't worry about it. You can just take notes, and when you get your hands on this, you'll be able to use this video as sort of your source guide to be able to get this thing up and running. Now, if you were to go to a ghostwriter, I had a guy email me yesterday, actually, and he said he's thinking about writing his own book, okay? And I'm like, why would you do that? I've already written it for you. And by the way, just to throw this in there, you have sponsors that you want to get on the back. So like here, I have a handyman, a carpet cleaner, a home inspector, a moving service, a house cleaner, and a painter. These companies, okay, they pay me $99 a year to be on the back of my book. So that's $600. And then guess what? Right there, okay, I've got a mortgage person that pays $300 a year to be there. So now I'm generating $900 a year just from some selling out the back of my book. Why is that important? Because with that $900, now I'm going to be able to print up, again, the books cost about $3 a piece to print. So you'll be able to print, if you're generating $900 a year, you'll be able to print 300 books, okay, per year at no cost to you. That's the reason why you want to have sponsors. Make sure that your sponsors are taking care of the cost, because what I always say is that the marketing dollars that you need exist in the pockets of your sponsors, okay, of your trade vendors. Remember, these people want to be where you are, so don't worry about it. I mean, I have a whole system actually that teaches you how to generate the sponsors. We have the sponsored order forms that you send out to them, everything, and that's on the support link, which will have the link here in the feed. Or down below, you can check and you'll have a link to our support page. And also remember that I have a dedicated support person that's on staff, so that if you have any questions about the book, or you get stuck on anything, you can call that person or email and they'll help you. Okay. So that's about the sponsor side of it. Okay. The other thing I want to mention before we get into the meat of it is that the book is 8 chapters. Okay, it's 8 chapters. I'll talk a little bit about each of these chapters, but you're talking about over 12,000 words in this book. 12,000. So if you were to have a ghostwriter to write this book for you, you're looking at over $12,000 that you'd have to spend out of pocket. And so this guy was, he emailed me and said, I'm thinking about writing my own book. I'm like, dude, all you got to do is license this. Your sponsors pay for the license, okay? And it's done for you. Even if you want to tweak it a lot, 90% of the work is done for you. So let's get into these chapters, and I want to talk about and around why I wrote each chapter, what each chapter will mean for your potential seller, your seller prospect. Now, keep in mind, this book is not only to generate you seller prospects, but it's also geared to help you as you're going through the listing process. After you've already gotten the listing, it's going to be a guide, okay, that your seller can use throughout the whole listing process. So now let's get into the different chapters. Chapter number 1 is called Deciding to Sell. Now, the purpose of this chapter, obviously, is to help someone think around the idea and the process of selling their home. A lot of people have put a lot of thought into selling their home. Some people have put very little thought into it. Many people are not quite sure if they really want to sell or if selling's the right idea, right thing for them to do. So this chapter is really written as a consultation chapter around this whole concept of, should you sell your home? Shouldn't you sell your home? What are the pros? What are the cons? Why? What are the popular reasons that people sell? In fact, I've got the top 10 reasons that people move. And some of the 4 or the 5 hardship reasons around that. Some of the emotional challenges that people face when they move. 5 tips to mentally prepare, because a lot of sellers have not mentally prepared for the process of moving. Okay, so I've got tips for that and so on. Now, another big reason for this chapter is you'll come across people that they don't want to meet with you yet because they're not quite at the point where they're ready to talk to a realtor about selling their home. They're just thinking about selling. And when they're thinking about selling, they don't necessarily want to be bothered with sitting down with an agent. Very interesting. So when you're working with buyers are cool sitting down with you when they're just thinking about buying. They're not really even in the market to buy. Like maybe they're not even going to buy a year from now, but it's kind of fun to go look at houses. So why not talk to an agent? We can go look at houses for the next year and a half. And when we decide to buy, or if we decide to buy, fine. Okay, that's good. Sellers don't have that attitude. Sellers will only want to meet with you when they're ready to list. Okay. It's very rare. Sometimes it'll happen if you have a friend or family member that will want to sit down with you a year ahead or 6 months ahead. But generally speaking, especially if the person doesn't really know you personally, that person is not going to contact you until they're ready to sell. Okay. It's just like going to buy a car. Okay. The last thing you want to do is walk up on that car lot. Okay. I just bought a car. I just bought a car this week. In fact, I'm taking delivery on it tomorrow. And the last thing that I wanted to do was walk into the dealership, right? Some people do this, but very few. Some people go to the dealership 6 months or a year before they're actually ready to buy. That's called dream building, okay? But most people, they're going to get into that car dealership when they're actually ready. And that's the way sellers are. That's why I love working with sellers, because for the most part, when a seller contacts you, they're ready. I mean, they're within probably 30 to 60 days, most of them, of getting their home on the market, unless it's a family member or friend again. So that's the reason for chapter 1. I'll give you another scenario around this, just so you can kind of be thinking of the psychology around it. Let's say, for example, you go to a gym, and you go to the gym, and Tony goes to the gym, and let's say Susie goes to the same gym. You guys see each other, randomly each morning. Tony and Susie both know that you're in real estate, but they, it's just kind of not really a friendship, but you just like gym buddies or whatever. You just see them at the gym. You don't really hang out with them or anything like that. Now, Susie tells Tony that she's thinking about selling her home. Okay. Now, Susie doesn't necessarily mention it to you because why? Because you're a realtor. And so Tony goes to you and says, hey, did you hear Susie's thinking about selling her house? And you're like, no, she didn't mention anything to me. Oh, well, you might want to talk to her. Okay. So then you go and you talk to Susie, right? Now, if you go to Susie and say, hey, I heard you're thinking about selling your home, typically the reaction, just think about what kind of reaction she's going to have. Now, remember, she didn't tell you directly. She talked to Tony about it. Typically the reaction is going to be, well, who told you that? Or, no, well, I'm just thinking about it. I'm not really. Why? Because people have a preconceived notion about talking to salespeople, which is what most people think we are. They believe that we are. Okay. We may not believe that about ourselves, that we're salespeople, but that's what they see. Okay. So they feel comfortable talking about, yeah, I'm thinking about selling my home to everybody else, but they don't necessarily feel comfortable talking about that kind of information to a realtor because they don't want to be sold. Remember, people love to buy, but they don't want to be sold. They love to buy, but they don't like being sold. And so what the book does is I'll be able to go to Susie and say, hey, Susie, Tony just casually mentioned that you were thinking about selling your home. You're not ready. You're not ready to maybe talk to somebody about that. But what I want to do in the meantime is give you a copy of my book. Okay. And you book them. Okay. You give them a copy of your book. And then that way, it's a soft sell. Okay. And that way I call it a takeaway. So you give them a copy of your book and then you start walking away. You say, now, if you have any questions, I'm around, but I just wanted to give you a copy of your book because I know you're not ready to really talk about it, but here's my book. Okay. Now what that does, and you start walking away, now all of a sudden the positioning changes. Okay. So now Susie's like, well, wait a minute, I do have a couple questions for you. Why? Because you led with an item of value. You gave an item of value. And most of the time when you give value, people want to return value to you. Okay. That's Mike Hernacki talks about in his book, The Secret to Permanent Prosperity. So that's another psychology piece behind this book. And the thing is, all you'll have to tell that person is, look, I heard you were thinking about selling your home. In chapter 1, I talk all about it. It may not be the right time for you to sell, or it may be, I don't know. But here's my book, read chapter 1, and then you're out. Okay. Now, what that also does is it puts a hook into that person, and it gives you an excuse to reconnect with that person and contact them again down the road, or even a week from them, because you've given them an item of value and say, hey, Susie, I just want to check in with you. Have you been able to read chapter 1? Do you have any questions for me? Okay. So, and it puts you top of mind as the realtor for choice when they are ready to sell. So that's the psychology behind chapter 1. Now, chapter 2 is all about marketing your home for sale. And people ask me all the time, what do I do? What do I recommend that they do to market homes for sale when they get a home? And if you look at chapter 2, which actually coincides, and most of this will coincide with your press kit, and I'll show you how that works here. So in chapter 2, it's going to be the same thing as what we talked about in this right here, which is the sales system, okay? Your marketing plan. So even though you've got a one-page marketing plan in your pre-listing package, when you go to chapter 2 of your book, what it does is it says, okay, over here we say that we're going to have colorful signage. We talk a little bit about it in one sentence, but in the book we can actually put more information about what that really is. Like, what are you really getting with that? And why do we do that? So in chapter 2, it's essentially the same thing as your marketing plan, except it breaks out each of those pieces that you're including and why you include it, okay, why it's important for them, all right? There's psychology behind every single piece that I put in the marketing plan that I use, and it really gives the seller a level of confidence that you're doing everything you can to get their home sold. Okay, that's, again, it's just another psychology piece. Now, if you're having trouble finding the resources for these things, then I've got a whole resource guide. If you go to the Mentorship Masters portal and you look in the resources section, go to the pre-listing package, and you'll see that there's actually a resources link where I show you the different vendors that can provide these things. Like if you want to have a 24-hour info hotline, if you want to do your virtual flyers, like where do I recommend you get these services? Okay, you can go anywhere you want because I don't have an affiliate relationship with any of these companies. They're not paying me to promote them. So, but I try to give you a couple of just ideas on where to go so you're not stuck and you're not lost. So that's all chapter 2 is. Chapter 2 shows them that you're competent in getting their home sold and that you're going to do everything in your power to do that. Now, moving on to chapter 3, that's where you're going to talk about pricing their home. Now, pricing is actually the most important thing that you're going to bring to the table. Now, remember, the market sets the price. You have nothing to do with that. People ask me all the time, well, man, I sure would like to get $500,000 for my house. And I can see that the market points to a price that's around $450,000, okay? So I'll ask the seller, I say, well, Susie, what price do you feel would create value in the mind of the buyer? Okay, let me say that again. Susie, what price do you feel would create value in the mind of the buyer? Okay, that's the way I pose the question on pricing. After I presented the market analysis, which, by the way, when I do a market analysis, I do a simple one-page CMA. I've seen many different market analysis, and I've tried all kinds of them myself, from a 50-page market analysis, a 24-page, a 30-page. Let me just tell you, people are not impressed with the number of pages, the graphics, the color images. They don't care. I just do a one-page, what we call a simple CMA, that just line lists, okay, here's the 3 actives, 3 pendings, and 3 solds, okay? 3 that are under contract, 3 that have sold, 3 that are active, that are about, that are pretty commensurate with your property in terms of square footage, and same subdivision and stuff like that. So keep your CMAs very simple. If you're having trouble doing a CMA, go back to my book, Success with Listings, go to the chapter where I talk all about doing CMAs, and I give you tons and tons of pointers on that. But here in chapter 3 of your book, it's really geared to getting their mind into reality around pricing, because a lot of sellers are in la-la land when it comes to price. So back to the whole thing about, when a seller, and by the way, I've got a whole bunch of scripts. I have 10 different scripts that I use for when a seller wants to overprice their home. So I'm not going to cover that here. Because that's also in other material that I have. It's in Success with Listings book. So, but there's 10 specific scripts that you can run through for a seller that wants to overprice. But I always tell a seller, look, I would love to sell your house for 500,000. Now I know the market's pointing to 450, right? And so again, you're always going to point them to what the market is saying, and you always use that language. So Susie, what's the market saying? What's the market data point to? You're in other words, you take the onus off of you and put it on the market. Okay, so because really we don't have a dog in that fight. Okay, the market is the one that dictates the price. Okay, now I always tell my sellers, look, I would love to get 500, 600, 700, or even $1 million for your property. Why? Because I'm on commission. The more you make, the more I make. Okay, so I want to get your home sold for top dollar. But let's look at what the market is saying, and then we go back to the data. Now, when they've read the chapter on pricing, they're in a much more realistic frame of mind when they sit down and talk to you. Okay, so it talks all about getting a CMA, how price is determined, the location, size, age of a home, how to review the comparables, what different trends are happening, and how to study that, pricing strategy meeting, and all this kind of stuff. I mean, we go into stuff like absorption rate, affordability index, which nobody cares about, but it just makes us look smart, makes us sound smart. Buyer's market versus a seller's market. How do we do our as-is pricing? We do have an as-is pricing strategy here, and here's how we do that. How do we price our luxury homes? So it really is kind of an educational piece. Now, it also explains the dangers of overpricing their home, because a lot of sellers will want to overprice their home at the beginning. So a lot of sellers, what they want to do is they want to overprice their home. And what this particular chapter does, is it helps them to avoid overpricing, because there's a lot of dangers when it comes to them overpricing the house. Okay, very, very bad strategy for them to come on the market overpriced. And so this is a good chapter to kind of explain to them what pricing their home is like, and how that works. Now, chapter 4 is all about getting their home ready for the market. Okay, they're going to want to do some certain specific things to get their home ready for the market. And chapter 4 breaks it down for them, lets them know exactly what kinds of things that they should do, what kinds of things that we recommend they do, and actually, if you're following along, like how this fits into your pre-listing package, we actually have the checklist here for the things that they need to do to prepare their home for sale. We have it in the pre-listing package, and that's a 2-page document. But we have it in the book as well. Okay, so that same checklist is in the book, and we explain a little bit more in the book. I mean, obviously, the checklist that's in your pre-listing package doesn't do any explaining, but in the book, it kind of explains it. I mean, it fully explains it, and uses several pages to do that. So we get into the fact that the 3 big tips that we recommend is that they declutter, clean, and paint. I've got to tell you, getting your listings sold, getting your listings to show well, those are the 3 big things that if your sellers will do those, at least, and these are things that really don't cost, they cost under $100. Like, what could you do for under $100 to get your listing ready for the market for under $100? Okay, the must-dos, and they're these 3. Number 1, declutter the house. Doesn't cost the seller any money. They just have to declutter. Anything that you can get rid of in the house, get rid of it. Put it in a box, put it up in the attic, put it in the garage, whatever. Clean the house. Get a nice deep cleaning. Okay, it just looks better. Because here's the thing: people, when they're looking at a house, they look at a house, and they will run their fingers along the baseboards. They'll check the window sills. I mean, so get a nice cleaning. Make the house clean, and then paint. Okay, that's something that with a couple of gallons of paint, the seller themselves can go and do touch-ups and so on throughout the house. And just those 3 things alone, for under $100, can be done by the seller. If they want to dig deeper, we recommend a pre-inspection. So that talks about the whole process of getting a pre-inspection, how to stage the home if they want to do it themselves, or the benefits of hiring a staging company to do that, which if my sellers want to do that, then I let them know the cost of it, and then I have them foot the bill, or I'll pay for it and collect at closing. It's not part of the services that I provide because staging can get quite expensive. Okay. Now you might want to do some light staging and pay for that if you choose to. It's up to you. It's a business decision, really. We give them exterior tips on getting the exterior ready, interior tips, kitchen and bath tips, uncluttering tips, cleaning tips, repairing tips, how to neutralize. And so here's the thing. This chapter really is kind of a guide. It really helps walk them through what they need to do so that they don't have to call you and ask for direction. You know what I'm saying? Because even if you sat down and told them all the stuff to do, they forget most of it anyway within a few days. So remember, your book serves also as a companion guide, a companion piece for your seller so that they, so that they can basically have, they have, essentially what they're doing is they have a little piece of you with them. Okay. This is you're basically their guide through your book. It saves you tons of time, by the way, to do it this way. One thing that you have to remember is that you have to constantly anchor your client back to your book. So when they start asking you questions, you say, oh, you know what? I covered that in chapter 4, okay? Or I covered that in chapter 3, or I covered that in chapter 6, whatever it might be. And so you don't have to refuse to answer the question. So if somebody calls you and they say, hey, what do I need to bring to closing? Oh, that's a great question. I covered that in chapter 8 of the book. Oh, yeah, that's right. But let me just tell you real quick and then go back to chapter 8, in case you forget, after we talk. So what you're doing is you're training them. You're not being rude. You're not like, look, I'm not going to answer your question. Just go read it. You're not being rude. You're going to answer their question, but you're training them that you've already given them a resource and you're jogging their memory. So after they do it a couple of times, like they do it one time, they do it a second time, you're like, oh, I'm glad you asked that. I covered that in chapter 5. They're like, oh, I keep forgetting I got that book. And then they'll pretty much stop asking you because they know your answer is going to be, it's in the book, right? And so they'll start realizing that they have a little piece of you in pretty much their back pocket, okay? So it trains the client on how to get the information they need without having to contact you, okay? Which is what they want to do anyway. I mean, people would prefer to just Google it than to call somebody. Like that's the way I am anyway. If I want to know the hours of a restaurant, I just pull it up on my phone. Some people would prefer to call the restaurant, be put on hold and wait and all that. But, most people just look it up and I got it done. You know what I'm saying? So that's chapter 4. Chapter 5 is all about choosing the right agent. So this chapter is really a lot of psychology that really helps indoctrinate them into the fact that you are absolutely the best choice for them and why they should hire you. Now, if you want to, you can actually embellish this chapter with a lot of information about you. If you feel that there's a lot of information that you can add, like if you're a mega agent, you're doing really well, you have a big team, a brokerage, whatever, then you can actually add a lot more information. And I say a brokerage because a lot of the folks that join me here at EXP are brokerages that still operate as a brokerage under EXP. So it's quite fascinating to watch. They might have 20, 30, 40, 50 or more agents, and they're operating the way they always have, but through EXP, and their agents are going out with this book. I get into the perils of hiring a discount brokerage, selling the home yourself. I talk about that. If they're thinking about going FSBO, we talk about that. How commission works. We educate them on the process of how the commission works. So that's really a great chapter for educating them on why they need to hire you to get their home sold, okay? And that takes us to chapter 6, which is all about handling showings. So once they've already made the right decision to hire you as their agent, now they've got to, the previous chapter talked about how to get their home ready. This next chapter, chapter 6, talks about how are they going to handle showings, when their house is being shown. Because once they get their home on the market, they're going to be like, hey, how do I do this? Are they going to call me? Are they going to do this? Are they going to? So this, remember, even if somebody has sold a home before, they don't remember much of the process. So what you're doing here, instead of spending a lot of your valuable time educating every single person, remember, I'm trying to get you to a high volume business. High volume. Write that down, high volume. The only way you can do high volume is if you have the right systems in place so that people can get the information they need without having to contact you. Okay, and that's why this book is such a great resource. Now all your sellers are just going to have to go to chapter 6, and in fact, once you put them on MLS, you say, hey Susie, we just hit MLS. I want to make sure that you go back to chapter 6 of the book. Remember the book? Oh yeah, the book. Go back to chapter 6 and read chapter 6, because it's going to have all the information that you need about how to handle showings. And by the way, if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call or give my assistant a call, okay? Or my business partner, whatever your terminology is for your person. Now, the other thing is in your pre-listing package. Also, you've got your top tips for showing the home. Okay, you've got that checklist there as well. So that's kind of the same thing as chapter 6, except chapter 6 really goes into greater depth of explaining how to show. Now, we talk about showing with renters. We talk about why it's so important to have the house in show condition. We talk about many of the top tips that they want to consider when they sell their house. Okay, so that's what chapter 6 is. Now, moving on to chapter 7, which is working with offers. This is a huge one. Now, got my watermelon water in the house, y'all. Woo, fresh squeezed. Now, in chapter 7, this chapter is going to save you hours and hours and hours of time, because once you have an offer on the house, you're going to contact Susie and say, hey, Susie, I want you to talk it over with Bob, but I just sent you an offer. I just emailed it to you. And what I want you to do is I want to make sure that you and Bob read chapter 7 of my book. It's called Working with Offers. And get the offer in front of you along with chapter 7 of the book. And that way you can kind of follow along and kind of read through. And then once you've done that, contact me with any questions you have. Okay. Now, by the way, chapter 7 is only, what is it? 6 pages? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages, or 5.5 pages. So it's not that you're asking them to do a lot. But if you sit down with them and go over the offer, or if you go over the offer with them over the phone, that might take an hour. But now that you've got them checking out chapter 7 of your book and doing and going through it that way, now guess what? You're having your book do the work for you. Okay, you're educating them on things like the sales price, how financing works, escrow, that process a little bit, closing costs and how that is factored in. What would happen if you receive multiple offers, what to expect, and what the process would be for that. Lowball offers. Okay, how they should position their mindset around receiving a lowball offer, because a lot of sellers get PO'd when they get a lowball offer. And I put them into a different mindset around lowball offers. I talk about the fact that negotiating is an art form, etc. So this is something that they're going to want to read while they go through the offer. And it's going to save you, if you had the book for nothing else but for this is going to save you at least an hour for every listing you take. So if you take 40 listings this year, this is going to save you 40 hours of time. And what is that, a vacation? That's a week off, right, in Jamaica. So it's a very, very valuable piece. And by the way, when you're having that week off in Jamaica and you do get an offer, you have them read chapter 7, that's going to save you from taking time away from your family to explain. And trust me, when I was getting 2 to 3 houses under contract a week, this process was a lifesaver. Okay, this process of using the book was a lifesaver. Now, the last chapter is called Closing the Sale. Closing the Sale. And in that chapter, we're talking all about, the close of escrow. So we talk things about the buyer inspection process and how that's going to work. It's very important that you educate them on that whole inspection process and what to expect. For example, one of the things that I put in here is that they should. I always advise my clients, and this is you talking to them, by the way. So this is what you've put in your book. I always advise my clients to mentally set aside 1% of the sales price to address any repairs that come up during the option period. For example, if your home price is $315,000, count on about $3,000 set aside, payable at closing for inspection-related issues, just in case. Now, obviously, the inspection-related issues could be a lot more than that. Okay, that's a given. But what I'm doing is I'm psychologically setting them up to part with some money. Okay, because if you don't psychologically set them up to part with some of the money, they're going to look at the net sheet and figure that's what I'm going to get, and that's all that they want, right? And they're going to start to get sometimes greedy. I hate to use that term, but that's what sometimes happens. Sometimes you'll have a seller that's like, man, if you can get $300 for it, I'm good. But then you end up getting $325, and next thing you know, because somebody offered $325, they're not willing to spend $5,000 in closing costs. I'm like, well, dude, you said you would take $300,000 for the house when we did the listing, but sellers get amnesia, okay? And that's the reason why you want to set them up for the idea that there's going to be some repair. Now, if there aren't any, that's great, okay? And if the repairs end up being more than 1%, oh well, who could have known? You didn't know that they needed a new roof. You didn't know that the foundation was messed up. You couldn't have known that their AC system had major issues. You couldn't have known that the cast iron plumbing needed to be repaired or replaced. So these are things that, see, psychologically, if you set them up that there's going to have to be some money that they spend after they're under contract, then you've done your job that way. We also talk here about contract to close. How are you going to work with out-of-town sellers? How you work with out-of-town sellers. So if they're out of town, which many of the properties that I've listed over my career, the sellers lived in another state, or they've already moved out of the house. So they're out of town. So we talk about the process. Don't worry about it. We can close from anywhere. You don't have to fly into town. So we help just set up the expectations, what to expect on the day of closing. What are the items that they should bring to closing? Okay. And then here's a moving checklist. So this is what they should do 2 months prior, 1 month before, all the stuff that they should consider doing, 2 weeks before closing, a week before the move, and the day before the move. So again, this book is really an incredible resource that throughout the life of the listing will save you, from what I've seen, from the front end to the back end, about 3.5, 4 hours on every listing you take. Okay, so and that's the reason why if you're going to take 100 listings this year, this book is designed to save you 300 to 400 hours. Maybe not you, but your admin or your business partners, whoever does this for you, it's going to save 300 to 400 hours of their time or your time, so that you can spend that time on other things. Okay, it's an incredible time saver, because I guarantee you, and we're talking about through the life of the listing, you take a listing, and throughout the life of the listing, by the time you explain to a person things like deciding to sell, what to expect there, marketing their home for sale, the psychology around it, how to price the house, how to get their home ready, how to work with the offer. You spending all this time explaining all these things to them throughout the life of the listing, you're talking 3.5 to 4 hours per listing of time that you spend on the phone or texting or whatever method, contacting with them, your email or whatever, that information. Okay, so this is an incredible time saver, and that is the way that you use this book, this piece, in your real estate practice. Okay, so that's what I want to share with you guys on your pre-listing pack, your pre-listing book, if you will, or your listing book, not pre-listing book, your listing book. And go back and watch the video before this where I talked all about your pre-listing package, because these two go together, okay? And then there was a video that I did before that about your pre-listing video and the importance of that. So that's it for now, guys. Hey, I love you from the bottom of my heart. I wish you success. I know you're going to achieve your highest heights, your biggest dreams, if you keep on doing what I suggest that you do. Keep on doing the 2. That's 2 hours every single day, Monday through Thursday, that you're spending in your lead generation bunker doing the success activities that I tell you to do. Okay? So we'll be back again with another episode where we're going to continue, and we're going to, on the next one, just so you know, and I'm so glad that we got to, because I've actually never sat down for an hour with you guys and explained in detail about the book, why I wrote the book, and how it's going to help you, how it's going to become an incredible time saver for you. So I'm glad I got to do that with you. The next time we're together, we're going to talk about circle prospecting. This is a huge opportunity for you, especially if you have these other pieces like your book, your pre-listing package, your pre-listing video. Circle prospecting, you're going to crush it with that. Hey, see you on the next one. God bless. Love you.